Picture this. You inherit 47 acres of prime Montana land from your grandfather, complete with mineral rights and a century-old access road. The smell of pine sap still clings to the survey stakes when I discover HOA President Brenda has built an entire subdivision, 36 luxury homes, right on my property, claiming she bought it from some county tax sale. The kicker? She's collecting $400 monthly HOA fees from each homeowner while their SUVs crunch over my gravel road daily. When I showed her the deed, she smirked, looked me up and down like I crawled out from under a rock, and said, "Listen, hun, maybe you should get a real lawyer instead of whatever public defender you found on Craigslist." The sound of her acrylic nails tapping dismissively still echoes in my ears. What would you do if some Karen literally stole your land and built McMansions on it? And where are you watching from? I guarantee your HOA stories can't top this. My name's Jake Mitchell, and before this nightmare started, I was just a 34-year-old electrician living paycheck to paycheck in Billings. Then Grandpa Henry passed, leaving me his 47-acre spread outside Whitefish, complete with timber rights, mineral rights, and a crystal-clear mountain stream that sounds like nature's own white noise machine. The land had been in our family since 1923. Grandpa always said, "Jake, this dirt's worth more than gold, but only if you're smart enough to hold on to it." I planned to build a modest cabin, maybe start that electrical contracting business I'd been dreaming about. The morning air up there smells like freedom, pine needles mixed with that crisp Montana cold that burns your lungs in the best way. But here's where things get interesting. The property came with one peculiar feature, a private gravel road that dead-ended at the county highway. Grandpa had maintained it for decades, and legally, it was mine. Think of it as a 200-yard driveway that happened to be wide enough for 2 trucks. Enter Brenda Kowalski. Brenda wasn't just any HOA president, she was the kind who'd measure your grass with a ruler and fine you for having the wrong shade of mailbox. Picture a woman who wore pearls to the grocery store and drove a white Escalade with personalized plates reading HOAPRES. Her voice had that particular pitch that could crack glass. You know the type. 3 months after Grandpa's funeral, I decided to visit the property for the first time as the official owner. That's when I discovered Brenda's little empire. Whitefish Meadows, a gated community of 36 identical beige houses, each worth about $400,000. The development sprawled across what I knew was my land, complete with street signs, sidewalks, and a fancy stone entrance featuring bronze lettering. But wait, it gets better. Every single resident was using my private road as their primary access route. I counted 72 vehicles that morning, tires grinding over the gravel Grandpa had laid down with his own hands. The sound was like fingernails on a chalkboard. When I knocked on Brenda's door, a massive colonial with columns that belonged in Georgia, not Montana, she opened it wearing a bathrobe that probably cost more than my truck. "Can I help you?" she asked, eyeing my work boots like I'd tracked in something unpleasant. I introduced myself, explained the situation politely, and showed her Grandpa's deed. Her reaction? A laugh that sounded like a hyena discovering fresh roadkill. "Oh, honey," she said, "I bought this land fair and square at a county tax sale 3 years ago. Your grandfather obviously didn't pay his taxes." The problem? I had proof Grandpa's taxes were current through 2023. Every receipt, every canceled check, organized in a manila folder with his meticulous handwriting. "Listen, hun," Brenda continued, "maybe you should get a real lawyer instead of whatever public defender you found on Craigslist. This development is perfectly legal, and we've got homeowners paying $400 monthly HOA fees for the privilege of living here. You think we're just going to pack up and leave because some electrician shows up with old paperwork?" That's when she dropped the real bombshell. "Besides, even if you somehow prove you own the land, which you won't, we've got squatters' rights. Look it up, cowboy." The meeting ended with her slamming the door so hard that her decorative wreath fell to the porch. I stood there listening to the distant hum of central air units and automatic sprinkler systems, all powered by electricity running through lines I'd helped install for the county. Walking back to my beat-up Ford, I noticed something Brenda had overlooked in her arrogance. Every single home in Whitefish Meadows depended on that private road for access. There was literally no other way in or out of her little kingdom. That's when the gears started turning. 2 days later, I hired Cassandra Webb, a property attorney who specialized in land disputes. Her office smelled like leather-bound law books and strong coffee, the kind of place that screamed, "I win cases." Within 48 hours, she'd confirmed what I already knew. The land was legally mine, and Brenda's tax sale was complete fiction. "Here's the fascinating part," Cassandra explained, spreading county documents across her mahogany desk. "There was never a tax sale. Your grandfather's payments are all documented. Ms. Kowalski somehow convinced a corrupt county clerk to forge sale documents. This isn't just trespassing, it's criminal fraud. Armed with this ammunition, I marched back to Brenda's McMansion. This time, she answered the door fully dressed in what looked like a country club uniform. White capri pants, pink polo shirt, and enough jewelry to fund a small country's defense budget. "Oh, it's you again," she sighed, checking her manicured nails. I thought I made myself clear. I handed her a certified letter from Cassandra outlining our legal position. Brenda didn't even open it. Instead, she tore it in half, let the pieces flutter to her welcome mat, and said, "You know what? Since you want to play games, let's play games." That afternoon, every homeowner in Whitefish Meadows received an emergency HOA notice claiming I was a disgruntled squatter attempting to terrorize the community with frivolous lawsuits. The notice warned residents to call police immediately if they saw me on HOA property. But Brenda's first real mistake was what she did next. She installed a security gate at the entrance to my private road, not at her development entrance, but at the county highway junction where my property began. A big black iron monstrosity with spikes on top and a keypad entry system. The metallic clang when it closed sounded like a prison door slamming shut. Here's what Brenda didn't realize. By gating my road, she'd just admitted it wasn't public access. You can't gate public property, but private property? That's a different story entirely. I called Cassandra immediately. Through her laughter, she managed to say, "Jake, she just handed us our smoking gun. Installing a gate on someone else's private road is criminal trespassing with property damage. We can now demand immediate removal and charge her for every day it remains." The next morning, I drove to the gate with my digital camera. Remember, this was before everyone had smartphones, and documented everything. Serial numbers, installation company logos, even the concrete footings they'd poured without permits. The morning frost made each photo crystal clear, capturing every detail that would matter in court. But while I was taking pictures, something unexpected happened. A young mother pushing a stroller approached from inside the development. Sarah Smith, as I'd later learn, lived in house number 23 with her husband David and 2-year-old daughter Emma. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Are you the man Brenda warned us about?" I explained who I was and why I was there. Sarah's expression shifted from suspicion to horror as the truth sank in. "You mean we don't actually own our land? We paid $420,000 for our house." "I'm sorry," I said. "But legally you're all trespassing on my family's property." Sarah's face went pale. "We used our entire life savings for the down payment. David works 2 jobs to afford the mortgage. If this development is illegal..." That conversation haunted me all night. These weren't wealthy investors. They were working families who'd been scammed just as badly as I had. The difference was they'd put their life savings into houses built on stolen land. The next day, Brenda escalated again. She hired Pine Security, a private company that stationed guards at the gate 24/7. These weren't mall cops. They were ex-military types in tactical gear who looked like they'd been imported from a war zone. The smell of their diesel generator mixing with cigarette smoke created an industrial fog that hung over the entrance like a toxic cloud. When I approached to document this latest development, the head guard, a mountain of a man named Chuck, stepped forward with his hand resting on what looked suspiciously like pepper spray. "Private property, sir. You need to leave." "This is my private property," I replied, holding up the deed. Chuck's response, "I don't care what that paper says. Ma'am pays me to keep troublemakers out, and you look like trouble." And that evening, I received a certified letter from Kowalski & Associates Legal Services. Apparently, Brenda's cousin was a paralegal who'd started playing lawyer. The letter demanded I cease and desist all harassment of Whitefish Meadows residents and threatened a restraining order if I continued trespassing on HOA property. But here's the beautiful part. By hiring armed guards and sending legal threats, Brenda had just escalated this from a property dispute to something much bigger. She was about to learn why you never corner an electrician who knows exactly which wires to cut. Brenda's security theater lasted exactly 1 week before I found her Achilles heel, and it was hiding in plain sight at the county courthouse. While researching property records, I discovered something beautiful. Whitefish Meadows wasn't just built on stolen land. It was built without proper permits, no environmental impact study, no septic system approval, and most importantly for an electrician like me, no electrical inspection certificates. Every house in that development was technically condemned property waiting to happen. "This is a gold mine," Cassandra said, practically bouncing in her chair. "We can force immediate evacuations for safety violations alone." But before I could file complaints with the county, Brenda struck again, this time targeting my livelihood. I arrived at a routine electrical job on Tuesday morning to find my client, Mrs. Patterson, waiting with a nervous expression and a printout in her hands. The paper smelled like fresh toner and bad news. "Jake," she said apologetically, "I received this email about you yesterday. I'm sorry, but I can't risk using an electrician with legal troubles. The email sent from concernedcitizenbrenda@gmail.com to every major employer in Whitefish painted me as a violent squatter who was harassing innocent families and under investigation for trespassing. It included my business license number, my personal cell phone, and a grainy photo of me standing near the gate, obviously taken without my knowledge. Within 48 hours, I'd lost 3 major contracts worth $15,000. The sound of my phone not ringing became deafening. But Brenda had made a critical mistake. She'd put her defamation campaign in writing, complete with false statements and my business information. In Montana, that's textbook business libel with quantifiable damages. I forwarded everything to Cassandra, who responded with an emoji I didn't know lawyers were allowed to use. Jake, she just handed us a slam-dunk civil suit. Business libel in Montana carries automatic damages plus attorney fees. She's going to pay for her own prosecution. That afternoon, I decided to visit Sarah Smith again, the young mother I'd met at the gate. This time, I brought documentation, copies of the real property records, photos of the unpermitted construction, and a list of code violations I'd identified as a licensed electrician. Sarah answered the door looking exhausted, her 2-year-old daughter clinging to her leg. The house behind her was beautiful. Hardwood floors, granite countertops, the kind of place young families dream about owning. "I've been researching everything you told me," she said quietly. "David thinks I'm crazy, but something doesn't add up. Brenda won't show us the original purchase documents, and our title insurance company keeps giving us the runaround." I spread the county records across her kitchen table. "Sarah, I'm sorry to confirm your worst fears, but every house in this development is built on land that legally belongs to me. More than that, none of these homes passed proper inspections." She pointed to an outlet near her sink. "That electrical work has never felt right. Sometimes the lights flicker when we run the dishwasher." I pulled out my voltage tester. Old habits die hard. Sure enough, the outlet was wired backwards, creating a dangerous short-circuit risk. "Sarah, this isn't just about property ownership anymore. This is about safety. Your daughter could be seriously hurt." That's when Sarah dropped her own bombshell. "Jake, there's something else. Brenda's been collecting additional special assessments from everyone, $200 per month for legal defense funds. She says we're all being sued by a crazy person and we need to stick together. Do the math. 36 homes, x $200 monthly equals $7,200 in extra income." Brenda was pocketing while painting me as the villain. She wasn't just stealing land, she was running a protection racket. "There's more," Sarah continued. "Last week she called a mandatory HOA meeting. Anyone who didn't attend got fined $500. She announced new rules. No talking to strangers, no discussing community legal issues with outsiders, and anyone caught fraternizing with the enemy, her words, would face immediate eviction proceedings." The smell of Sarah's afternoon coffee couldn't mask the scent of fear in that kitchen. This wasn't just about property anymore. Brenda had created a climate of intimidation that would make any dictator proud. That evening, I received an unexpected phone call from Chuck, the security guard. "Listen, man," he said, his voice unusually quiet. "I quit working for that crazy lady. She's not paying us anyway, 3 weeks behind on paychecks. But there's something you should know. She's planning to file criminal trespassing charges against you this Friday. Says she's got photos and witness statements proving you've been stalking residents." "What kind of photos?" "The kind that ain't exactly accurate, if you know what I mean." Chuck's tip-off gave me exactly what I needed. 48 hours to prepare my own surprise for Brenda's little photo op. Time to show her what happens when you mess with someone who knows how to rewire an entire system from the ground up. Friday morning arrived with the kind of mountain chill that makes your breath visible and your resolve crystal clear. I knew Brenda was planning her ambush, so I decided to give her exactly what she wanted, with a few modifications she wasn't expecting. At 7:30 a.m., I parked my truck at the county highway junction, just outside the gate to my private road. I brought my surveyor's equipment, my camera, and most importantly, my grandfather's original survey stakes, the ones with his initials carved deep into weathered wood that still smelled faintly of creosote. Within minutes, Brenda appeared like a vulture circling fresh roadkill. She'd brought backup, 2 neighbors, her cousin the paralegal, and someone with an expensive camera who looked like he'd never seen dirt before. "There he is," Brenda announced loud enough to wake the dead. "Everyone stay back. He could be dangerous." I continued measuring property lines, hammering survey stakes into the frozen ground. Each metallic clang echoed off the surrounding pines like a countdown timer. "Excuse me, sir," called the photographer. "I'm with the Whitefish Gazette. Can you comment on allegations that you've been harassing residents of this peaceful community?" Here's where Brenda's plan started unraveling. She'd invited a real journalist to document her citizen's arrest of a dangerous trespasser, except I wasn't trespassing, and I had documentation proving it. I handed the reporter copies of my property deed, the fraudulent tax sale documents, and photographs of unpermitted construction. I'm Jake Mitchell, legal owner of this land. These people built 36 homes on property that's been in my family since 1923. The reporter's expression shifted from bored to fascinated. You're saying this entire development is illegal? Not just illegal, dangerous. As a licensed electrician, I've identified multiple code violations that put residents at risk. That's when Brenda made her second mistake of the morning. Instead of backing down, she doubled down on her lies. Don't listen to him, she shrieked. He's a disgruntled squatter trying to steal our homes. We have legal documents proving— Show them, I interrupted calmly. Silence. The kind of silence that falls over a courtroom when the defendant realizes their lawyer just quit. I don't have to prove anything to you, Brenda sputtered. The reporter, whose name was Marcus Webb, no relation to my attorney, pulled out his own notebook. Ms. Kowalski, can you provide documentation of your land purchase? That's confidential HOA information. But here's where my real plan kicked in. While Brenda was performing for the camera, I'd been systematically documenting something she'd overlooked. Her gate installation had damaged county utility lines. The metallic tang of damaged copper wiring mixed with the morning pine scent as I showed Marcus where Brenda's contractors had cut through underground phone cables. See these severed lines? That's destruction of county infrastructure, a felony in Montana. Marcus was furiously taking notes when Sarah Smith appeared, pushing her stroller and looking determined despite her obvious nervousness. Excuse me, she said to the reporter. I live here, and I think people should know what's really happening. Brenda's face went purple. Sarah, I forbid you to talk to these people. You're violating HOA bylaws. With all due respect, Brenda, Sarah replied with surprising steel in her voice, I've been researching those bylaws. They're not legally binding because this HOA was never properly registered with the state. The reporter's pen was smoking by now. Ms. Smith, are you saying the HOA is operating illegally? I'm saying we've paid over $400,000 for homes we don't legally own on land that belongs to Mr. Mitchell, governed by an HOA that doesn't legally exist. Meanwhile, Brenda's been collecting thousands in monthly fees for services she doesn't provide. That's when David Smith emerged from house number 23, carrying a manila folder that smelled like fresh photocopies and righteous anger. I'm an accountant, he announced to the growing crowd. Last night, my wife and I did some investigating. Brenda, you've collected over $180,000 in HOA fees and special assessments in the past year. Where's that money? Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Those funds are properly managed, according to HOA guidelines. What guidelines? David continued. Show us the budget, show us the bank statements, show us any documentation of where our money went. The photographer was having a field day capturing Brenda's meltdown in high-definition color. But the real bombshell came when Marcus asked the question that changed everything. Ms. Kowalski, if this development is legitimate, why haven't you filed a countersuit against Mr. Mitchell? Dead silence. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping. Because here's what Brenda couldn't say. Filing a lawsuit would require her to produce documents she didn't have, prove ownership she couldn't establish, and submit to discovery that would expose her entire fraud. She was trapped, and everyone knew it. This interview is over, Brenda screamed, storming toward her Escalade. You'll be hearing from my lawyers. As her tires squealed against asphalt, I realized something beautiful. Brenda had just provided Marcus Webb with enough material for a front-page expose that would bury her deeper than any lawsuit ever could. The Whitefish Gazette article hit stands on Wednesday morning with a headline that made my coffee taste like victory. Local HOA president accused of massive land fraud. But the real earthquake came Thursday afternoon when Marcus Webb called with information that changed everything. Jake, you need to sit down for this, he said, his voice tight with excitement. I've been digging deeper into Brenda's background, and what I found is, well, it's bigger than we thought. I was rewiring a junction box at my apartment when he called, and the sharp scent of electrical tape couldn't mask the anticipation in the air. What did you find? Brenda Kowalski doesn't just run one illegal HOA. She's been running this scam across 3 different counties. Whitefish Meadows is her 3rd fraudulent development in 5 years. The screwdriver slipped from my hand, clattering to the concrete floor with a metallic ring that echoed like a bell. There's more, Marcus continued. Remember how she claimed your grandfather didn't pay his taxes? I tracked down the county clerk who allegedly processed the tax sale. His name is Dennis Kowalski, Brenda's brother-in-law. Jesus. It gets better. Dennis has been taking bribes to create fake tax sale documents, then splitting the profits with Brenda when she develops the stolen land. They've stolen over 300 acres and defrauded hundreds of families out of millions of dollars. But here's where the story took a turn I never saw coming. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor, FBI Special Agent Lisa Martinez, carrying a badge that gleamed like polished steel and questions that smelled like serious federal charges. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, settling into my kitchen chair with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. "We've been investigating the Kowalski organization for mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. Your case is the missing piece we needed." The coffee maker gurgled in the background as Agent Martinez explained that Brenda's operation stretched far beyond Montana. She's part of a larger network that targets inherited rural property across the Mountain West. They identify recently deceased landowners, forge tax documents, then build developments before families realize what's happened. How many people are involved? At least 12 conspirators across 4 states. But here's what makes your case special, Mr. Mitchell. You fought back. Most victims don't discover the fraud until it's too late to recover their property. Agent Martinez opened a briefcase that smelled like leather and contained more documentation than I'd seen outside a law library. Bank records, wire transfer receipts, recorded phone conversations between Brenda and Dennis, evidence of a criminal enterprise that had been operating for over a decade. "The Bureau wants to offer you a deal," she continued. "Cooperate with our investigation, wear a recording device during interactions with Ms. Kowalski, and we'll fast-track the return of your property while pursuing federal charges against the entire network." But the real revelation came when she showed me a list of Brenda's other victims: a Vietnam veteran in Colorado who lost his family ranch, a single mother in Wyoming whose inherited farmland was turned into a golf course, an elderly couple in Idaho whose mineral rights were stolen along with their property. "Mr. Mitchell, this isn't just about your 47 acres anymore. This is about stopping a criminal organization that's destroyed dozens of families and stolen millions in property." The weight of that responsibility settled on my shoulders like a lead blanket. This wasn't just personal revenge anymore. This was about justice for people who didn't have the resources or knowledge to fight back. "What do you need me to do?" Agent Martinez smiled, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I was part of something bigger than my own anger. "We need you to do exactly what you've been doing, Mr. Mitchell. Keep pushing, keep documenting, keep making Brenda Kowalski think she's smarter than everyone else. And then we take down the whole damn operation." Agent Martinez's FBI recording device looked like a fancy pen but felt like carrying a live grenade. The weight of federal justice mixed with the crisp mountain air as I assembled my unlikely alliance in Cassandra's law office, a space that now smelled like determination and strong coffee instead of just leather books. "Gentlemen and ladies," Cassandra announced, spreading blueprints across her conference table, "we're not just fighting for Jake's property anymore, we're dismantling a criminal enterprise." My team read like something out of a heist movie. Sarah Smith, the accountant's wife turned amateur detective; David Smith, whose spreadsheet skills would make the IRS weep with joy; Marcus Webb, the journalist with a nose for corruption; and Agent Martinez, who could probably arrest someone just by looking at them sternly. "Here's what we know," Agent Martinez began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who'd taken down bigger fish than Brenda Kowalski. "The Kowalski network operates on a predictable pattern: identify target property, forge tax documents, build quickly, then disappear with the profits before anyone notices." David pulled out a laptop that hummed like a contented cat. "I've been analyzing Brenda's financial records, the ones Sarah photographed during HOA meetings. She's collected $847,000 in fees and assessments over 18 months, but only spent $23,000 on actual community services." "Where'd the rest go?" I asked. "Offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, funneled through shell companies registered in Delaware." David's fingers danced across the keyboard. "Classic money laundering operation disguised as HOA management. In Montana, HOA funds must be held in bonded accounts with detailed quarterly reporting to state regulators. Diverting those funds to personal accounts is embezzlement, a felony carrying up to 10 years in prison. Always demand to see HOA financial records. Legitimate associations have nothing to hide." Sarah spread out photographs that captured every detail of the development like a crime scene investigation. "I've documented 17 building code violations, including improper foundation work that could cause structural collapse during our next major earthquake." "Earthquake?" I asked. "We're sitting on an active fault line," she replied matter-of-factly. "Brenda's contractors skipped the geological survey required for developments over 25 units. If we get a 5.0 tremor, half these houses could literally slide down the mountain." Marcus looked up from his notepad, pen poised like a weapon. I've been tracking down the other victims Agent Martinez mentioned. The Colorado veteran, he's willing to testify. So are the Wyoming family and 3 others we've located. This isn't just about Montana anymore, it's a federal conspiracy case. Agent Martinez nodded approvingly. Which brings us to the operation itself. Jake, we need you to approach Brenda one more time wearing the wire, get her talking about the tax sale, the forged documents, anything that demonstrates criminal intent. What's my angle? Desperation, Cassandra suggested, the fluorescent lights reflecting off her glasses like inspiration striking. Pretend you're broke, losing your electrical license, willing to negotiate. Make her think she's won. Federal wire fraud requires proof of intent to deceive across state lines. Recording someone admitting to forging government documents provides that proof instantly. Never admit to crimes over the phone. Law enforcement can and will use recorded conversations in court. The plan crystallized like frost on a windshield. While I played the defeated victim, Sarah would continue photographing financial documents during HOA meetings. David would trace more money transfers, Marcus would interview additional victims, and Agent Martinez would coordinate with prosecutors in 4 states to build an airtight federal case. But here's the beautiful part, I said, feeling puzzle pieces click into place with satisfying precision. Brenda thinks she's got me cornered, which means she'll get cocky. Cocky criminals make mistakes. What kind of mistakes? Sarah asked. I pulled out my grandfather's original survey map, its edges yellow with age and wisdom. She's never actually seen the complete property boundaries. She thinks she stole 47 acres, but Grandpa's land extends another 15 acres past the development, including the hillside where she built her own house. Dead silence. Then Cassandra started laughing, a sound like champagne corks popping. You mean Brenda's personal residence is also built on your property? According to this 1923 survey, her McMansion sits dead center on mineral rights that are worth about $2.3 million in today's market. David's calculator was smoking by now. Jake, if you can prove ownership of those mineral rights. I don't just prove ownership. I prove she's been illegally extracting and selling gravel from my land to pave county roads. That's theft of natural resources, which carries automatic treble damages under Montana law. Mineral rights in Montana include surface materials like gravel, sand, and stone. Unauthorized extraction constitutes theft with damages calculated at 3 times market value plus attorney fees. Always verify mineral rights before purchasing rural property. They're often more valuable than the land itself. Agent Martinez was grinning like a shark who'd just smelled blood in the water. Mr. Mitchell, I think Brenda Kowalski is about to have the worst week of her criminal career. The wire felt like a metallic spider crawling under my shirt as I approached Brenda's house Monday morning, playing the role of a broken man ready to surrender. The smell of her automatic sprinkler system mixing with expensive fertilizer created an artificial paradise that would soon become her personal hell. I'd practiced my defeated posture in the mirror, shoulders slumped, voice cracking slightly, the body language of someone who'd run out of fight. Agent Martinez had coached me on key phrases that would trigger admissions. I can't afford to keep fighting. Maybe we can work something out, and the golden ticket. I just need to know how you pulled this off so perfectly. Brenda answered the door wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. Well, well, look what the cat dragged in. Ready to admit defeat, cowboy? Mrs. Kowalski, I said, letting my voice tremble just slightly. I think we need to talk. She invited me into her living room, a monument to nouveau riche excess featuring gold-plated everything and furniture that screamed, I have money but no taste. The morning sunlight streaming through oversized windows illuminated dust particles that danced like tiny witnesses to what was about to unfold. I'll be honest with you, I continued, settling into a chair that felt like sitting on a marshmallow made of leather. I'm broke. Lost 3 major contracts because of this legal mess. My attorney says I'm looking at years of litigation I can't afford. Brenda's eyes lit up like a predator sensing weakness. I tried to warn you, honey. David and Goliath stories only work in the Bible. That's just it. I'm not David anymore. I'm just tired. I rubbed my face with hands that genuinely shook from the adrenaline of playing this role. Maybe there's a way we can work something out. What kind of arrangement did you have in mind? Here's where I took the biggest risk of the entire operation. I need to understand how you did it. The tax sale, the development permits, all of it. If I'm going to walk away from my family's land, I need to know how completely I got outplayed. Brenda practically purred with satisfaction. Oh, Jake, it was almost too easy. She poured herself coffee from a machine that probably cost more than my truck, the rich aroma mixing with her triumph. See, most people don't understand how the system really works. What do you mean? County clerks are just civil servants making $35,000 a year. Show them the right incentive, and suddenly paperwork can be flexible. She laughed, the sound echoing off marble countertops like coins dropping into a collection plate. My brother-in-law Dennis has been managing tax sales for 15 years. He knows which properties have elderly owners, which families are too poor to fight back, which parcels are worth developing. The recording device captured every word as Brenda detailed her criminal enterprise with the pride of a master craftsman explaining technique. We target inherited land because families are usually scattered, grieving, and clueless about property law. Dennis creates fake tax delinquency records, then processes a sale to one of our shell companies. By the time anyone notices, we've got buildings in the ground and residents paying monthly fees. But what about inspections? Building permits? Brenda's smile turned predatory. Jake, honey, you really don't understand how small-town politics work. The building inspector owes his job to county commissioners who owe their elections to developers who donate to their campaigns. Everyone gets their cut, everyone stays quiet. She was confessioning so freely that I almost forgot to seem defeated. How many times have you done this? Whitefish Meadows is our 4th development. We've got projects planned in Utah and Colorado, bigger properties, higher-end homes. This little operation has generated over $12 million in revenue over 5 years. But here's where Brenda's arrogance led to her biggest mistake yet. As she detailed her criminal network, she also revealed something Agent Martinez had been desperate to confirm: the location of the offshore accounts. The beauty of the Cayman Islands, she continued, is that they don't ask questions about deposits under $500,000. We just break up the transfers, launder them through legitimate HOA management companies, and voila, clean money. I leaned forward, playing the role of someone impressed despite himself. Brenda, I have to admit, this is genius. But what happens when someone like me doesn't give up? Her expression darkened like storm clouds gathering over mountains. Usually they get tired and go away. But when they don't... She paused, sipping her coffee with deliberate slowness. Well, let's just say accidents happen. Electrical problems in small apartments, car troubles on mountain roads. People disappear all the time in Montana. The temperature in that room dropped 20 degrees as I realized Brenda Kowalski wasn't just a con artist. She was describing murder as casually as discussing the weather. The wire captured every threatening word as my blood turned to ice water. Is that a threat, Mrs. Kowalski? That's just reality, cowboy. Sometimes people need to learn when to quit while they're still breathing. That afternoon, Agent Martinez played back Brenda's recorded threats in the FBI field office, her face grim as granite. The sound of Brenda casually discussing accidents and people who disappear filled the sterile room like toxic gas, making everyone present understand we weren't just dealing with fraud anymore. Mr. Mitchell, Agent Martinez said, clicking off the recording device, you just captured a confession to conspiracy, money laundering, bribery of public officials, and criminal threats. But more importantly, you may have recorded evidence of previous murders. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. You think she's killed people before? We're reopening 3 accidental deaths in counties where the Kowalski network operated. A property owner in Colorado who died in a suspicious house fire. A Wyoming rancher whose truck went off a cliff the day before he was scheduled to meet with an attorney. An elderly woman in Idaho who suffered food poisoning after refusing to sell mineral rights. But before I could fully process that nightmare, my phone rang with news that made everything infinitely worse. Sarah Smith's voice was barely a whisper, tight with terror. Jake, they took David. What do you mean, took him? 2 men came to our house this morning. They said David was being arrested for financial crimes related to his investigation of HOA funds. But Jake, they weren't real police. The metallic taste of adrenaline flooded my mouth. How do you know? Real officers would have shown warrants, read Miranda rights, allowed David to call an attorney. These men just handcuffed him and drove away in an unmarked van. When I called the sheriff's department, they had no record of any arrest. Agent Martinez was already on her radio, coordinating with local law enforcement while I tried to keep Sarah calm. The sound of sirens in the distance mixed with her quiet sobbing created a symphony of escalating crisis. Sarah, where are you now? Hiding in Emma's closet with my daughter. Jake, I'm scared. What if they come back? Within 30 minutes, federal agents had Sarah and Emma in protective custody while a joint FBI sheriff's task force launched a manhunt for David Smith. But Brenda wasn't finished escalating. She was just getting started. That evening, Marcus Webb called with his voice shaking like autumn leaves. Jake, my newspaper office was firebombed tonight. Everything's gone. Computers, files, interview recordings, photographs, 20 years of journalism turned to ash. The smell of smoke still clung to his clothes when he met us at the FBI office, his face blackened with soot and determination. But here's the thing. I wasn't supposed to be there. The bomb went off at 8 p.m., exactly when I normally finish editing. Someone wanted me dead. Agent Martinez studied security camera footage that showed two figures in dark clothing placing incendiary devices around the Whitefish Gazette building. The grainy video captured their methodical approach. This wasn't vandalism. It was attempted murder disguised as property destruction. They're cleaning house, she concluded grimly, eliminating witnesses, destroying evidence, trying to scare everyone into silence. But Brenda's escalation reached peak insanity the next morning when I discovered what she'd done to my grandfather's grave. I'd driven to the family cemetery, a small plot on a hillside overlooking the stolen land, to update Grandpa Henry on the fight for his property. What I found made my blood boil with volcanic intensity. Someone had dug up his grave. The headstone lay shattered like broken teeth, and the mahogany casket sat exposed in the Montana morning sun, its brass handles gleaming obscenely. Scattered around the desecrated plot were copies of property deeds, survey maps, and a handwritten note in Brenda's distinctive handwriting. Even the dead can't help you now. The sound that escaped my throat wasn't quite human, part roar, part sob, part primal scream of rage that echoed off the surrounding mountains. This wasn't just criminal anymore. This was personal on a level that bypassed rational thought and went straight to the reptilian brain where justice and vengeance lived in the same neighborhood. I called Agent Martinez with hands that shook like earthquake aftershocks. She dug up my grandfather's grave. Jesus Christ, Jake, this is desecration of human remains, a federal crime when it's part of an ongoing conspiracy. But more importantly, it proves she's completely lost control. Desperate criminals make fatal mistakes. That afternoon, while crime scene technicians photographed the gravesite and collected DNA evidence from the disturbed earth, I received an unexpected call from Chuck, the former security guard. Jake, man, you need to know they've got your friend David at the old mining camp up Glacier Road, but it ain't just Brenda anymore. There's at least 6 guys with military gear, and they're talking about making this whole problem disappear permanently. The stench of fear mixed with the lingering smoke from Marcus's destroyed office as Agent Martinez coordinated an emergency rescue operation, but she pulled me aside with news that changed everything. Jake, we've identified the other members of Brenda's network. This isn't just about land fraud. They're part of a larger criminal organization that's been operating across the Mountain West for over a decade, and they've killed before. The Whitefish Community Center hadn't seen this much excitement since the Great Pie-throwing incident of 2019. Agent Martinez had orchestrated a brilliant trap, a fake emergency town hall supposedly called by Brenda to address malicious rumors about Whitefish Meadows. The smell of burnt coffee mixed with nervous sweat as over 200 residents packed into folding chairs, unaware they were about to witness the downfall of a criminal empire. Brenda arrived fashionably late in her white Escalade, flanked by 2 men in cheap suits who looked like they'd learned intimidation from watching bad mob movies. She wore a powder blue blazer that screamed, "Trust me," and carried a briefcase that probably contained more lies than a political convention. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice echoing through the microphone with practiced authority, "we're here tonight to address the vicious attacks on our beautiful community by a disgruntled squatter who refuses to accept reality." That's when I stood up from the back row, wearing a wire that felt heavier than a nuclear reactor. "Evening, Brenda. Mind if I ask a few questions?" Her face went through more color changes than a traffic light having a seizure. "Security, remove this man immediately." But her security had been quietly arrested 10 minutes earlier by FBI agents posing as janitors. Sometimes the best traps are the ones nobody sees coming. Agent Martinez rose from her seat in the 3rd row, badge gleaming under fluorescent lights like a beacon of justice. "Actually, Ms. Kowalski, I think everyone here would benefit from some honest answers. I'm Special Agent Lisa Martinez, Federal Bureau of Investigation." The collective gasp from 200 residents sounded like air being sucked out of a vacuum chamber. Cell phones appeared like mushrooms after rain as people started recording what they sensed would be historic. "This is harassment!" Brenda shrieked, but her voice cracked like thin ice under pressure. "I demand to see warrants!" Agent Martinez smiled with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. "Brenda Kowalski, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, bribery of public officials, desecration of human remains, and conspiracy to commit murder." But the real mic drop moment came when the community center doors opened and David Smith walked in, flanked by 2 federal marshals and looking like he'd survived a war zone. The sound of Sarah's sob of relief echoed through the suddenly silent room. "David!" Sarah rushed from her seat, Emma toddling behind her like a tiny witness to justice. "I'm okay, baby," David said, embracing his family while the crowd watched in stunned silence. But I've got some interesting stories to tell about Brenda's offshore bank accounts. That's when Marcus Webb stood up, his press credentials gleaming like armor. Ms. Kowalski, for the record, can you explain how you accumulated $12 million in assets on a county clerk's salary? Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. That's private financial information. Not anymore, Agent Martinez announced, producing a federal search warrant thick enough to use as a weapon. Your accounts in the Cayman Islands were frozen this morning. So were your brother-in-law's assets, your shell companies in Delaware, and the 15 properties you've fraudulently developed across 4 states. The crowd was riveted like spectators at the world's most satisfying tennis match, heads swiveling between Brenda's meltdown and the FBI's systematic destruction of her criminal empire. But I had my own moment to savor. Standing up with my grandfather's original deed in hand, I addressed the room with a voice that carried 4 generations of Montana determination. Folks, I want everyone here to know, every single home in Whitefish Meadows was built on land that legally belongs to me. But I'm not here to destroy families or leave anyone homeless. The silence was so complete you could hear heartbeats. Tomorrow morning, I'll be filing paperwork to donate the entire 47 acres to the Whitefish Community Land Trust. Every family who bought a home in good faith will receive clear title for exactly what they paid. No more, no less. The only person losing anything tonight is the woman who stole it in the first place. The explosion of applause sounded like thunder rolling across mountains. But the sweetest sound came when Brenda finally cracked under the pressure of her collapsing world. You can't prove anything, she screamed, her composure dissolving like sugar in rain. Yes, I took the money. Yes, I forged the documents, but everyone does it. The whole system is corrupt. Why shouldn't I get my share? Agent Martinez clicked off her recording device with satisfaction that practically glowed. Thank you, Ms. Kowalski. That confession just saved taxpayers the cost of a lengthy trial. As federal agents led Brenda away in handcuffs, she turned back with eyes full of the kind of hatred that makes rattlesnakes look friendly. This isn't over, Mitchell. You have no idea what you've started. My response echoed through the community center like a bell tolling for justice. Brenda, it was over the day you messed with my grandfather's grave. Some things are more important than money, like family, truth, and making sure bullies learn there are consequences. 6 months later, I stood on the front porch of my new cabin, built on the original foundation where Grandpa Henry's house once stood, watching the sunrise paint the Glacier National Park peaks in shades of gold that no amount of money could buy. The smell of fresh-cut pine mixed with morning coffee created the kind of peace that only comes after a storm has finally passed. The Whitefish Meadows Community Land Trust had become a model for affordable housing across Montana. Every family kept their homes at cost, with monthly payments going toward community improvements instead of some criminal's offshore account. Sarah Smith had been elected the first president of the Legitimate Homeowners Association, and David's accounting skills ensured every penny was tracked with military precision. But the real satisfaction came from watching justice unfold like a perfectly planned electrical circuit. Brenda Kowalski received 25 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and racketeering. Her brother-in-law Dennis got 20 years for corruption and falsifying government documents. The network's other members were scattered across federal facilities from Colorado to Washington, their criminal empire dismantled piece by piece like a house built on stolen foundations. The FBI recovered over $18 million in stolen assets, which were distributed to victims across 4 states. The Vietnam veteran in Colorado got his ranch back, along with enough compensation to cover the years of illegal development. The Wyoming family received triple damages for their stolen farmland. The Idaho couple's mineral rights were restored with interest that set them up for retirement. Agent Martinez received a commendation for breaking up what prosecutors called the largest rural land fraud conspiracy in western United States history. Marcus Webb's newspaper, rebuilt with insurance money and community donations, won a Pulitzer nomination for investigative journalism. His series, The Land Thieves, became required reading in journalism schools across the country. Chuck, the former security guard, testified against Brenda in exchange for immunity and now works as head of security for the Community Land Trust, protecting families instead of threatening them. Sometimes redemption comes in unexpected packages. As for my electrical business, word of mouth from the Whitefish Meadows story brought more contracts than I could handle. Turns out people appreciate an electrician who knows how to rewire more than just buildings, someone who can untangle corruption and restore power to communities that need it most. The Land Trust established the Henry Mitchell Memorial Scholarship for rural students pursuing trades education. Every year, 10 young people receive full funding for electrical, plumbing, or carpentry training. skills that build communities instead of tearing them down. Grandpa would have loved knowing his stolen land became a foundation for honest work and honest futures. Sarah Smith started a consulting business helping other communities identify and report HOA fraud. Her motto, "If the books don't balance, neither does the leadership." She's already helped expose 3 other criminal networks and saved dozens of families from financial ruin. The old mining camp where David was held became a wilderness education center for at-risk youth. Sometimes the places where evil operates become foundations for good, a kind of cosmic justice that feels right in the Montana mountains. But perhaps the sweetest ending came when I finally had Grandpa Henry properly reburied in a new cemetery overlooking the community that now thrived on his land. The headstone reads, "Henry Mitchell. He believed land should serve families, not criminals." Every summer, the Community Land Trust hosts the Henry Mitchell Festival, 3 days of music, food, and celebration that draws visitors from across the region. Local artisans sell handmade goods, families share stories around campfires, and kids learn traditional Montana skills like fly fishing and wilderness navigation. The festival generates enough revenue to maintain the scholarship fund and support other community projects. Standing here now, watching my neighbors tend gardens and children play in yards that were once built on lies, I understand what Grandpa meant about land being worth more than gold. He was right, but only when it's held by people who understand that real wealth comes from community, not conquest. Here's my challenge to everyone watching. If you've got an HOA horror story, whether it's financial fraud, abuse of power, or just petty tyranny, share it in the comments below. Your story might help someone else recognize the warning signs before it's too late. And if this kind of justice-served content speaks to you, hit that subscribe button. Because there are more Brendas out there, more communities under attack, and more stories that need telling. Sometimes the best revenge is simply making sure the truth gets heard.
Thanks for watching HOA Stories. If this episode made you laugh or shake your head at HOA madness, hit that like button and drop your opinion below. We post HOA Karen Chaos and Neighborhood Showdowns every week, so be sure to subscribe to catch the next unbelievable story.